All right, President Trump may no longer be in office, but the Department of Justice special counsel appointed by his administration to investigate the origins of the Trump-Russia collusion. Remember that? Remember that bogus theory that continues to live on? Well, earlier this month, in fact, about 10 days ago, John Durham, who was the special counsel, secured an indictment against Michael Sussman. He is a prominent Democratic cybersecurity attorney who was linked to a 2016 contract that had connections with the Hillary Clinton campaign. Joining us now to talk about what this may mean is Andy McCarthy, former Chief Assistant U.S. Attorney for the Southern District of New York. Andy, welcome back to Washington Watch.
Tony, great to be with you.
So, Andy, this is a kind of a complicated story. So if you would unpack this for our listeners.
Well, maybe the best thing is to go to the bottom line, because when you get an indictment, there's two things going on. One is the charge that's brought in the case, and the other is the broader narrative that the charge has been placed into. And I think here the narrative is more important. What Durham, who is the special counsel by Bill Barr as Attorney General under President Trump, what he has charged Michael Sussman with is a single count of making a false statement to the FBI. But more importantly, that count, which can usually be written in just a single paragraph, comes at the end of a 27-page narrative, the upshot of which is that Durham seems to be operating from a theory that the Trump-Russia collusion farce was completely manufactured by the Clinton campaign and from the campaign's operatives, which include its lawyers, the people at Fusion GPS, this research outfit who hired the former British spy Christopher Steele to crank out that bogus Steele dossier, and other operatives who were working for the Clinton campaign. They peddled this narrative to the FBI, to the media, and that really was all there was to it, just a lot of political smoke that nobody ever really believed was real.
So this indictment is for, if I'm not mistaken, lying to an FBI agent or not disclosing facts or hiding facts. And the statute of limitations was about to expire, which triggered this indictment, would suggest, as you said, the narrative surrounding it is that there is more to come. Is that right?
Yeah, I think that's right, Tony. I wouldn't necessarily say that there's more indictments to come, although there will be. One of the more significant things that Barr did before he left toward the conclusion of the Trump administration was appoint Durham as special counsel, so he'd have the same status as Mueller did investigating the investigation that he did. And the idea behind that is a special counsel gets to write a report at the end, which is technically for the Attorney General, but they tend to end up being public. So I think in this instance, we may or may not see more indictments. I suspect we'll probably see a few more, but most of what went on here, I think, is under the category of kind of sleazy political dirty tricks for which there ought to be accountability rather than things that necessarily violate the federal penal law. And as a result, I think the report may be much more interesting than the charges that get brought.
Interesting. So, Andy, what's the time frame here? Is there a time in which the special counsel expires and he has to have his report done, or can this go on until he's finished?
No, there's no timetable, although, as you pointed out at the beginning, Tony, his hand was forced in this case by virtue of the statute of limitation, which tends to be 5 years for most federal crimes. So the reason he had to bring this false statements charge on, I think it was September 19th of this year, was because it was on September 19th of 2016 that the conversation that Sussman had with the FBI took place. So if he hadn't brought the charge, he'd have lost it. Now, there are ways that with some charges like conspiracy that you can extend the statute of limitations. But the fact is, at a certain point, things do get stale. So, I do think he's probably at the end of his criminal investigation, and he'll have to be making decisions about whether to bring charges. And, of course, he's now working for the Biden Justice Department, so the Attorney General, Merrick Garland, will be able to say yay or nay on any charges that he wants to bring. It's interesting that Garland didn't stop him from indicting Sussman, who's a pretty prominent Democratic lawyer.
So, Andy McCarthy, you've very familiar with this type of stuff, and by the way, we have your piece posted at TonyPerkins.com. Andy's written a column on this. If you'd like to go a little deeper into it, you can go to TonyPerkins.com and read that article. But reading between the lines, and as I said, I think it was you wrote this a 27-page narrative surrounding this indictment. What do you anticipate? I mean, I hear this, I'm sure you do, people saying, why is there no justice in what happened here? Will we see justice?
Well, it depends on what your definition of justice is. If people's idea of justice is, will there be a big bells and whistles indictment where everybody who did something wrong starts racketeering or something and, go to federal prison, I think the answer is no. If the question is, will there be accountability for the Clinton campaign and what happened here, in the sense that a historical document will be produced by the special counsel, which will lay out in chapter and verse what happened here, I think that probably will happen.
So enough to be a deterrent for this type of stuff in the future?
Tony, you and I know that the Clintons have been at this for, what would you say now, 30 years? So I haven't seen anything deter them to this point. And I'm kind of cynical about how much interim effect there is from this kind of stuff. But I do think it'll be important to have accountability.
That's a good start. Andy McCarthy, great to talk with you. Thanks so much for taking time to join us today.
Thank you, Tony.